Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoints Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. You've heard their point, now listen to the counterpoint.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on November 11th, November 10th, 2021. And, it's a week after Halloween. Masks are off after Halloween, but the Biden administration still as scary as ever. But before we get into anything, let's go to our panel. On our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Ever. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. This episode, it's going to be kind of a little bit of a departure. We're kind of focusing on a little more on the culture war on this particular episode and sort of how it's eking its way into government. And in this case, it's sort of Biden's, and not just Biden. I mean, it's the left in general, but this focus on, trans stuff getting into government. And, it's a libertarian and, there's no issues with, what people really want to do personally, that kind of thing. But when it starts becoming part of policy, that's when it starts, kind of going sideways on some of this stuff. And so we're going to kind of cycle through maybe a few stories that have been going on this year under Biden and, maybe, kick around some of what's wrong with it. Jumping to the very first story, we're talking about Biden administration and their change in the stance on trans athletes and protections under Title IX. And so Biden is essentially this last year tried to equate, gender identity with actual sexual identity or not just identity, but your biological sex, in that case. And that's literally what the prior law had been there to protect, is the idea of discrimination of women in colleges so that there was more funding for men's sports and women's sports, that sort of thing. And, it sort of morphed into this a new thing with gender identity. Now suddenly it's however you personally feel, well, you got to make sure that the college has, protections and setups for you as well in your competition. So I guess if you feel like a girl, then you can compete with the girls is sort of where this has gone. And, there's a few other stories to cover as well, but just kind of get your guys' thoughts on this one. What do you guys think of the government sort of getting involved with how people identify and whether or not government should be providing special protections with how you feel inside?
Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Maybe sometimes you feel like you have a nut or two, and sometimes you don't. I don't know. I like how the two transgender athletes in the picture are both in front. Looks like they're both in front of the entire pack of real women athletes in the picture, leading one to believe that if you're transgender, you're going to win.
Yeah.
Well, let me say up front that I have no problem as if someone wish to identify, if a man wish to identify himself as a woman, and if a woman wish to identify herself as a man, I personally have no problem with that. My problem begins when they expect us to accept this thing and accept it to the point where, like, transgender women could compete in girls' sports, transgender women could use the female bathroom and things like these things. And they also the big issue about pronouns and all these other things get into there also. You see, this thing truly is anti-science, okay? I'm sorry to say it. I know some people is going to be very upset if they hear me say that. This thing is totally anti-science. Now, it is true, some people have this psychological dysphoria and it makes them believe that they may be a woman when they are not, or makes them believe that they are a man when they are not. It is true that they do suffer and they do struggle with this thing, but this thing is psychological. There's absolutely nothing physiological to support their contention if they wish to change, from a man to a woman, or from a woman to a man. Now, I have no problem with them wanting to live like a man if they are not, or wanting to live like a woman if they're not. I have no problem with that. But when they want us to accept it in the broader society, it creates all kind of problem. It is known biologically that men are taller, faster, and stronger. It is known. There's no dispute about that. So how could you then allow a biological man who's now calling himself a woman to compete in sports where they are biological women, when we know the biological man, even though he's calling himself a woman, will have an advantage? There's something wrong with that. Fundamentally wrong with that. I mean, I think in a society which we're trying to talk so much about equality, at least we should see what's wrong and unfair about that.
Yeah. You talk about the equity of being born with different DNA than somebody else that makes you bigger and faster and stronger, and then say, oh, well, but it's funny though. One of the topics that you sort of got into there was, it seemed like, was whether or not we should have to accept them as individuals, or have to accept somebody who's different as an individual. And I mean, this is essentially freedom of association, right? I mean, that's, kind of a libertarian principle, is that you should be free to associate with whoever you want to. And we see that in our everyday relationships. Certainly if you were to make friends with somebody, you wouldn't want the government assigning your friend. You would want to figure that friend out on your own, I guess. And so, this is certainly, I think, something most people in their personal lives probably would agree with, that they would want freedom of association. But then as the government grows and we grow the commons, all these things that we have to share through government, now suddenly it's like, well, I mean, people are paying taxes, and, so if they're going to pay for a girl sport, do they have to pay for a transgender sport too? Do they have to pay for a male sport? So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about that? I mean, as far as just the, expand the commons in the government, and, should they have a separate, category that the schools have to support?
Well, if I could just say something short, I think the girls in this picture, the real girls, want to freely associate with other girls in their race. So I think their freedom of association has been infringed upon by some edict from the government on high, to allow other people in there. So yeah. So if you're going to do that, then the school should pay for a transgender race. Okay, fork it out, schools, if you really want it that bad, but keep the transgenders out of the race with the girls and keep them out of the race with the boys, and just so you got boys, girls, transgender this, transgender that. Yeah, you end up with 75 different categories of 100-yard dash. Okay. And just go for it. I mean, hey, the money is endless, correct? There's never a issue with enough money for all this stuff. I mean, hey, if it's important enough, it doesn't matter the cost. I mean, the politicians tell us that all the time, right? It makes no difference. Whatever cost it is, we got to do this. It's so important. Okay, so if it's so damned important, then go ahead and pay for it yourself.
But there's a big hypocrisy in this. A really big hypocrisy. Even the transgender community, this so-called transgender community, even they, or that community, acknowledge that there's that men, that biological men are taller, faster, and stronger than biological women. Even they acknowledge it, and they don't even realize it. Look at something that you almost never hear about. Do you ever hear anyone complaining about a transgender? God, this is so confusing. I'm talking about a transgender boy trying to compete. No, a transgender woman. No, a transgender boy trying to compete in men's sports. Geez, this is so confusing. If you think, you almost never hear about that. You never hear about a girl who wants to be a boy, fighting to compete in boys or men's sports. You never hear about that. So they acknowledge indirectly that the biological men have an advantage over biological women, but still they want us to accept this destruction of women's sports by allowing biological men who calling themselves girls to participate in these activities. There's something wrong here, and something seriously wrong here. And about whether the school should be paying for this, I even have a problem with that, but we may have no choice. Maybe there should be a category for transgenders only, and let them compete, and then you could have the exclusively boys, exclusive girls, and exclusive transgender. Maybe that might be a reasonable compromise, I guess, so that we could all move along and try to obey science a little bit here. I guess I don't know.
Or even a more novel concept. How about have school choice? And maybe some schools will pop up that have solutions for this type of stuff instead of forcing everybody to one thing. And then you can choose to go to that school. But regardless, let's move on to the next topic. So one of the key figures in the Biden administration that's made a lot of news is Rachel Levine. And she's been in the news for several reasons. The most recent is because she was the first sworn-in 4-star officer, and I guess it was a public health service corps, I guess, where she was sworn in. And so they mentioned her, and it's funny too, in this particular article, they mentioned her as the first transgender 4-star officer. Then, and below they say first ever female admiral to oversee public health. And it really starts to confuse some of the ideas. Before we start commenting on that too, I wanted to jump into another article with her as well, because before she got appointed to that position, she was holding a different position for Biden, and she was questioned in front of Hall about the government pushing hormone blockers onto kids who identify themselves as I guess trans. And the idea that Rand Paul was trying to get out of her in the testimony is, should parents, I guess preferences be supreme on this, or should the school be able to just hand these things out with or without the parents' permission on some of these things? And so, and she wouldn't answer the question. You know, she kept telling him, well, this is a complicated issue, and I'd be happy to talk to you in private. Well, she was in front of a Senate committee. That was the whole point, to get a public, to allow the public to hear what she had to say on this. So anyways, you guys have any thoughts on some of these issues around Rachel Levine and, I guess, and what's going on with that?
Well, I guess the only thing I could say real quick is the left is obviously has, if there's any overriding trait in the left, it's the ability to avoid the truth.
I guess you're right. I think avoiding truth and evidence is a characteristic of the left. But what is happening here is a sort of totalitarianism that is going on, where we must bow down to all of these things. Now, I can't imagine that a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old could come home and say, whether they're a 5-year-old boy and saying, well, they want to be a girl, and the parents must honor this, okay? Yeah. Or that the school should be able to hand out blockers or hormone therapy or anything like that without the knowledge and consent of parents. I mean, this is totalitarianism at its worst, where even parents are losing their rights to raise their children as they see fit. I mean, the lunacy now is that if a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old say, well, I feel like a girl, even though that person was born a boy, and the parents must honor that, otherwise the parents is some sort of bigot or some sort of outdated human being or something like that. This is the kind of madness that's going on. I mean, if I get up tomorrow morning, I mean, this lunacy is really beyond belief to me, okay? If I get up tomorrow morning and say to you guys, I am a 6'6", Chinese woman. I would hope one of you guys going to challenge my sanity. I would hope so. Rather than sit around and say, "Oh God, Leon, you know, it's so brave of you to meet a 6'6" Chinese woman. Oh my goodness, this is so nice and wonderful." Now I am seriously hoping that somebody will challenge my sanity on this, because even if I want to believe that, that's fine. But expecting other people to believe that, my wife and my kids to believe that, or my grandson to believe that, I think that is sheer lunacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is just, I guess, some of the issues, you know, with some of this, I guess, culture war stuff being pushed into government, because it really makes you wonder exactly what role does government have in something like this. And certainly we talk about kids' health issues. I guess, you know, we can kind of see some of these issues pop up where who should reign supreme, the government, the child, or the parent in these situations. Suppose a kid had a broken arm and the parent wasn't doing anything to address it. Would we want the state to step in or not? But in some of these, you know, you take these things to extreme and suddenly you're right in the culture war. And it's like, well, Johnny said he feels like a girl today. So we're going to rush him into surgery pretty soon.
Yes.
I mean, you know, so it really, it seems like this is one of those issues that, I don't know, we may be struggling with for a while. I hope we're able to come to our senses on some of it, though. You know, it's funny because with kids, we say that they're not responsible to enter into a contract. And yet we're able to listen to them say, hey, I feel like this. Yeah. And then let them change their life over the whole thing. I don't know.
But this is just a point, though. This is just a point, though, where we will not accept the physiology of our anatomy. Now we want to take the psychology of our within our heads as the paramount thing in determining our identity. That if our psychology say, well, you know, we are boy when we were born a girl, or vice versa, we must accept that. And this is the totalitarianism that is going on. And we got to be careful with these lines, because if they can exercise, the left can exercise this totalitarianism in this area of our life, then what next? Because now it's reaching where the government is enforcing this upon us. I mean, I think here in California, there are laws about misgendering people. Could you imagine that? That you could be fined or maybe even in prison for misgendering someone. Good Lord, where are we living, in the Soviet Union?
Well, it's interesting that you say what next, because that's exactly the problem we were having recently in our discussion about the Loudoun County School District and what happened in the Virginia elections. Here we literally had a discussion going on over whether you know, people's identity their self-determined identity should determine which bathroom they use in a public school. And we had a case of a boy wearing a dress and a girl claiming she was raped by that boy wearing a dress in the girl's bathroom. So, you know, and you know, there were some other complications around this issue as well, where they tried to move the kid to another school and there was another sexual assault reported. So, but the bottom line is, this is where it plays into policy, where the rubber hits the road. Sounds like we have some noise going on in the background, but anyways, so that's you know, so this is really where the rubber hits the road on public policy. I mean, literally, your kids are going to a place where they're going to be confronted with this, whether or not somebody's handing them hormones or telling them that they're going to be sharing a bathroom with somebody who, you know, might not expect to see in there.
That noise was me sucking on my cough drop.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I thought it sounded almost like some air being shot out or something.
Air from my mouth.
Okay.
But you know the thing is, though, that we are seeing, like as we said before, this issue of boys and girls and their gender identity is permeating all over our society. And if we are dealing with kids who are in transition from man to boy, from boy to man and from girl to woman, and their hormones are raging, and they don't have a fully formed mature mind. Why would we not expect things like this to happen? It is going to happen. There's no way to get around it. I mean, we used to have clearly identified, this is the boys' bathroom, this is the girls' bathroom. Everybody knew where that was. And if any one of us went into into the wrong bathroom, there was hell to pay. At least that was how I was raised. But now we come along with these new enlightened people trying to tell us, well, it's not really that much of a problem. Really? I will bet you there are more cases of this thing that happened in Loudoun County, Virginia. I'll bet you there's a lot more of it going on right now in society, where boys and girls using the wrong bathroom, confused about their identity, supposedly, and all sorts of things are happening. God help us if we continue on this. I mean, I keep saying that I'm almost sounding like a broken record. But we got to be careful here that this totalitarian state that is being formed here don't engulf us all. Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me jump to the. I'm going to combine the next two stories really quick because it's kind of a little bit of an interesting one, but show how I guess the culture war sort of plays into policy as well. So this is kind of an odd commercial that just came out recently. It was the candy bar company Twix decided around Halloween that they were going to have this commercial, and the idea there's kind of a weird storyline, has nothing to do with candy. So it's a Halloween commercial by a candy bar company that has nothing to do with candy. And so, boy, there's some whistling sound just going on in the background.
I'm hearing it too.
Yeah. But anyways, okay. But there is, as far as the Twix company goes, it's literally a commercial that has nothing to do with Halloween and, well, I shouldn't say Halloween, but candy. And it's just a bit bizarre. But so the idea is this kid has a nanny that just sort of shows up out of nowhere, and the kid is wearing a dress, and it's not Halloween. And so the kid is, the nanny, I guess, becomes his friend, and then she helps him confront people who are picking on him because he's wearing a dress. And it sort of all comes down to the end where some kid comes up to bully the little boy who's wearing a dress. And and he says, what the heck are you wearing a dress for? It's and so he turns to the witch, who is his nanny, and she casts a spell and blows the other kid away. And it's just like, it had nothing to do with candy, the whole ad, and it was just some social messaging about it being okay if you're a boy to wear dresses, and it's just kind of I guess some of the culture war. And then that sort of takes us to this other story too, where in California, they've recently passed rules that large stores have to have aisles that have gender neutral kid stuff, which is, just sort of, why can't parents figure this stuff out for themselves? I mean, do they really need the government to tell stores to pick and choose their items so that they think that they're gender neutral? And what even is gender neutral? How is a store going to measure that? Anyways, I'll leave it to you guys to jump in on this real quick.
I'm just wondering what gives government the idea that they can go in and tell on non-safety related things. Okay, so you can't plug too many outlet or plugs into an outlet, okay, because it could cause a fire. Okay, you got fire code. You got the government telling an individual property owner or business owner or either one, what to do with their property. Okay, that's one thing. But this is just, what's this got to do with anything? What gives government the right or the power? The power. That's what it is, power. What gives government the power to tell the owner of his own business what to do with it and how to display it and all that kind of nonsense? It's got nothing to do with anything other than their idiotic political agenda here. That's all it is. It's just their pet now, apparently. God, we're not in debt far enough, and we don't face real problems of real import enough that we've got to go down this path because we've got so much time on our hands. We've got so much energy left over that we can tell business owners what to do with their toy aisles, toys of all things. Anyway, yeah, it just rubs me the wrong way.
The on the first story, Jason. I mean, Tim, you're right in what you just said. But in the first story, it did not involve the government. You're right, but it says that there's a virus out there where even businesses are accepting this woke garbage, right? So because the I don't know who's the maker of Twit, but there must be I'm sure it's some private organization, but they're accepting the nonsense that I don't want any kids to be bullied. Of course, I don't want that for anyone. But what they are saying there is, if you don't accept the transgender agenda, if you don't accept it, we will blow you away. We will destroy you. We will cancel you. That's essentially what the story is. That's the message they're sending. We better fall in line. We better bow down and say, "Thank you, sir. We will obey." And this is a dangerous message. That's the dangerous message that is embedded in that commercial.
And that is one of the odd things. At the end of the commercial, it is, in the end, a child that's bullying another child. And then an adult comes in, and it's just verbal abuse, by the way. It's not like physical force is being used on the other child. And then an adult comes in and literally uses possibly lethal force against the kid. Exactly. The kid just disappears. Exactly. In the commercial, they don't
lethal magic.
So just really disturbing, some of the concepts that are coming out about this. But in the end, how they're working their way into policy, because in the end, Twix is a private company. They sell candy bars, so if they want to, message themselves on, the fact that they like cloudy skies, or maybe they like rainbows, or maybe they like puppies, who knows, who cares? But when you can kind of see that there's some, it's almost like there's sort of some kind of what do you call it? I guess an alliance between some of these companies and what's happening in government. It's just kind of very strange, I guess.
But we already know for sure there's an alliance between the government and these big tech companies pushing these messages, though. We know that. We have already seen that in many here in California, then between the Biden administration and some of the big tech companies, Facebook in particular. So we know there are alliances going on, and some of these corporations are also lining up with the government. These people, maybe, I don't know, the manufacturer of Twitter is involved in these things or not, but we know things like that is going on. But they're trying to get this message to us that if we don't fall in line and if we don't obey, we could be in some serious trouble. And this is unbelievable.
Yeah, in the end, it makes you wonder. A little candy bar. I mean, it has nothing to do with the message, but I guess it's sort of like feeling a little confused. Not sure whether you like cookies or chocolate. Try a Twix, the cranny candy. I don't know what it's going to be called. But anyways, yeah, a little bit confused. I think that's how we're leaving today. Do you have any last moment, anything to say, Tim?
When you're betwixt a boy and a girl, you pick up your Twix.
You're betwixt. Until then.
Well said, Tim. Well said.
Until next time. We'll see you at the next one. Until then, stay free.
Live